Here's a question that makes people uncomfortable. What if the millions of Americans who believe the system is rigged aren't stupid, aren't crazy, and aren't simply brainwashed? What if their distrust makes perfect sense? Once you understand what they've actually lived through, what they actually feel, and what the word rigged really means to them? This video is not a defense of every claim. It is not an attack on anyone. It is an attempt to understand one of the most powerful psychological forces in modern American politics. The belief that the deck has been stacked, the game has been fixed, and the people who run the world are laughing at everyone else. Because if you want to understand what's happening in America, you have to start here. Part 1. Rigged is not just a political claim. Let's start with the word itself. When you hear someone say the system is rigged, your first instinct might be to think they're talking about ballot machines, or voter rolls, or election night counts. But that's not really what the word means, at least not entirely. For a lot of people, rigged is a compression. It's one small word that carries a massive weight of accumulated grievances. It means the economy is rigged because I worked hard my whole life and still can't get ahead. The media is rigged because they cover the stories that fit their worldview and ignore the ones that don't. The courts are rigged because rich people and well-connected people walk away clean while regular people don't. The universities are rigged because they churn out one kind of thinking and punish anyone who questions it. Washington is rigged because politicians promise things, get elected, and then serve the donors who funded their campaigns. Rigged is not really a theory, it's a feeling. And it's a feeling that has been building for a very long time. Think about it this way. Imagine you've been standing in a checkout line. You follow the rules, you waited your turn, you did what you were supposed to do. And then someone walks to the front of the line and the cashier waves them through. And when you complain, the manager tells you that you're imagining things. That experience, the experience of playing by the rules and feeling like the rules don't apply equally, is the emotional root of the rigged system belief. It's not just paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Whether the pattern is always accurate is a different question, but the feeling is real and it matters. And here's where it gets deeper, because feeling comes before the evidence. Always. Part 2. The feeling comes before the evidence. This is the part most people miss, and it's the key to understanding almost everything that follows. Human beings are not computers. We don't gather neutral information, weigh it carefully, and then arrive at a conclusion. We almost always do the opposite. We have a gut feeling first, often based on lived experience, identity, or emotion, and then we search for evidence that confirms it. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning. And it happens to everyone. Conservatives do it, liberals do it, academics do it, journalists do it. It's not a flaw in certain people, it's a feature of the human mind. Now here's the important part. If someone already feels ignored, disrespected, economically squeezed, or culturally displaced, then a claim like the system is rigged isn't going to feel like a wild conspiracy theory. It's going to feel like someone finally said out loud what they already knew in their bones. The emotion arrives first, the evidence comes second. And once that emotional foundation is in place, almost any new piece of information will get processed through it. This doesn't mean the belief is always wrong. Sometimes the feeling points towards something real. Sometimes institutions really do fail. Sometimes media really is biased. Sometimes powerful people really do protect each other. But it does mean that once someone has adopted the emotional framework of the system is rigged, their brain is primed to find confirmation everywhere and to dismiss contradictions as manipulation. So where does the original feeling come from? What actually happens in people's lives that makes this framework feel so true? The answer starts with something that doesn't get talked about enough: the psychology of status loss. Part 3. The power of status loss. There's a famous line from the sociologist Arlie Hochschild. She spent years talking to working-class conservatives in Louisiana, and she described their experience as standing in line. A long line toward the American dream. You've worked hard, you've waited your turn, you've followed the rules. And then you notice something. Other people are being moved to the front of the line ahead of you. Immigrants, minorities, people who didn't wait as long. And the government, the people who are supposed to be neutral referees, are the ones doing it. Whether or not that's an accurate description of policy is almost beside the point. It's the emotional experience that matters. And that experience of being passed over, of losing your place, of having your patience and your effort count for less, is one of the most psychologically powerful forces in human behavior. Researchers have found that people react more strongly to perceived loss than to equivalent gains. If you give someone $20, they feel pleased. If you take $20 from them, they feel furious. The same amount of money creates different intensities of emotion depending on whether it's going up or going down. Now apply that to an entire way of life. Imagine you grew up in a town where the factory was the backbone of everything. The jobs, the church attendance, the Friday night football games, the sense that if you worked hard and stayed straight, things would be okay. And then the factory closes. And not only does it close, but the politicians who promised to protect it gave tax breaks to the company that moved the jobs overseas. And not only that, but the television now seems to treat everything you grew up believing, your religion, your traditions, your sense of what makes a man or a family or a community, as something outdated and embarrassing. That's not just economic loss. That's identity loss. It's cultural loss. It's the loss of feeling like your way of life has value. And when people feel that kind of loss, they don't just get sad, they get angry. They look for an explanation, they look for someone responsible. Which is exactly where the elite betrayal story comes in. Part 4. The elite betrayal story. Here's the narrative that binds everything together. And it's powerful precisely because it contains a lot of truth. The story goes like this. There is a class of people. Politicians, journalists, academics, tech executives, judges, intelligence officials, entertainment executives, corporate leaders, who all went to the same schools, live in the same cities, read the same publications, and share the same basic worldview. They run the major institutions. They decide what gets covered and what gets ignored. They make the rules, and they largely get to decide when the rules apply. And they keep failing, keep lying, and keep walking away without consequences. The financial crisis of 2008, the Iraq War sold on intelligence that turned out to be false, the opioid epidemic, fueled in part by pharmaceutical companies that paid off doctors and settled for fines that were fractions of their profits, the Hunter Biden laptop story dismissed by major news outlets as Russian disinformation, only to later be confirmed as real, intelligence officials who lied under oath to Congress and faced no criminal consequences. Now, you can argue about the context of any one of these. You can explain the nuance. But step back and think about what the pattern looks like from the outside. Regular people lost their homes in 2008. No banker went to jail. Regular soldiers died in Iraq. The architects of that war became columnists and commentators. Regular families were destroyed by opioids. Executives paid settlements and moved on. The institutions that were supposed to check power, journalism, the judiciary, the intelligence community, seemed to close ranks around each other when it mattered most. The emotional core of the elite betrayal story is simple. They lie to us, laugh at us, and never pay the price. That feeling doesn't require a centralized conspiracy. It doesn't require anyone meeting in a back room. It just requires enough failures, enough hypocrisy, and enough perceived double standards. And the story writes itself. And into that story stepped one very unlikely figure. Part 5. Trump as the human middle finger. Donald Trump is not the cause of the distrust. He is a symptom of it. But he is also a very specific kind of symbol, one that is almost perfectly designed, intentionally or not, to appeal to people who feel betrayed by exactly the class of people who despise him most. Think about what the opposition to Trump looked like from the inside. The people condemning him were, in many cases, the exact same people that his supporters already distrusted. Journalists at major networks, former intelligence officials, Hollywood celebrities, Ivy League professors, European leaders, the Republican establishment, Washington insiders. When those people said Trump was dangerous, unfit, and dishonest, some of his supporters heard something very different. They heard, "He's one of us, not one of them." His roughness, his lack of polish, his willingness to say things that embarrassed the media, these weren't weaknesses to his base. They were proof that he wasn't scripted, wasn't controlled, wasn't a puppet of the system they already hated. And here's the deeper dynamic. When you attack Trump, you're not just attacking a politician. You're attacking the choice his supporters made. You're implying that they were fooled, or that their instincts are wrong, or that their anger is illegitimate. To many supporters, defending Trump isn't just politics, it's defending themselves. This creates a bond that is almost impossible to break from the outside, because every attack strengthens it. But what about the facts? What about the corrections? What about the investigations and the court cases and the journalists who laid everything out? This is the part that confuses people most, and the answer is stranger than most people expect. Part 6: Why Fact-Checking Often Fails. Here's a phenomenon that researchers have studied closely. Sometimes when you show someone a correction to a false belief, they don't update their belief. They dig in harder. This is called the backfire effect. Now, the research on how universal this effect is has been debated, but the underlying mechanism is real, and it's especially powerful when distrust is already in place. Think about it from the perspective of someone who already believes the system is rigged. Who is doing the fact-checking? CNN, the New York Times, PolitiFact, university researchers, government agencies, Twitter, now X, when it was applying content moderation. These are precisely the institutions that they already don't trust. So when one of these institutions says a claim is false, the question isn't just, is this true? The question becomes, why are they saying this? And if the answer that feels most emotionally consistent is because they're protecting themselves, then the correction doesn't reduce belief in the original claim. It can actually reinforce it. The messenger matters as much as the message. This is not irrationality in the traditional sense, it's actually a reasonable heuristic in the abstract. We should think about who's telling us something and what their incentives are. The problem is when that heuristic becomes so dominant that no source can ever be trusted, no matter what they say. Because once that happens, you've entered a different kind of territory. The territory where belief becomes identity. Part 7: Identity Protective Cognition. Here's the hard truth about deeply held political beliefs. They stop being just opinions. They become part of who you are. Psychologists call this identity protective cognition. When a belief is tied to your tribe, your community, your sense of morality, and your place in the world. Questioning that belief doesn't feel like updating your views. It feels like betraying your people. Imagine someone who has attended rallies, put signs in their yard, shared articles online for years, argued with family members, and built a community around a shared set of beliefs. The social cost of changing those beliefs is enormous. You lose your sense of belonging. You might lose friendships. You might lose your sense of meaning. And so the mind finds ways to protect the belief, not out of stupidity, but out of deep social survival instincts. We are fundamentally tribal animals. Belonging to the group feels as essential as eating. Threatening someone's tribal identity doesn't make them reconsider. It makes them fight. This is why the people most likely to change minds are not outsiders coming in with evidence. They're insiders. People within the same community, sharing the same values with established trust. The messenger, again, is everything. But it's not just community that reinforces these beliefs. There's a machine that runs 24 hours a day designed specifically to feed and amplify them. Part 8: The Internet Reward Machine. Social media platforms don't show you the world. They show you a customized version of the world designed to keep you engaged as long as possible. And what keeps people engaged? Outrage, moral indignation, fear, confirmation. The sense that something important is happening and you need to stay informed. The algorithm doesn't care about truth. It cares about clicks, time on site, and shares. And the content that gets the most of all three is content that confirms your existing beliefs, validates your existing anger, and frames the world in terms of a clear enemy and a clear fight. This is not a conservative problem or a liberal problem. It is a structural problem. But it hits especially hard when the underlying belief system is already built on distrust. Because distrust is an emotion that is endlessly renewable. There is always a new betrayal, always a new piece of evidence that something is wrong, always a new face on the enemy. Online communities give people something powerful, the feeling of not being alone. In an era when physical community has frayed, fewer people in church, fewer people in civic organizations, fewer people knowing their neighbors, online tribes become substitutes for belonging. Shared suspicion becomes social glue. And here's where it becomes something even more psychologically interesting. Because the belief in a rigged system doesn't just explain the world, it makes the world feel orderly. Part 9. Conspiracy thinking as emotional order. Imagine waking up every morning in a world that feels chaotic, unfair, and out of your control. Jobs disappear because of trade policies written in rooms you'll never enter. Your kids can't afford the same life you had despite doing everything right. The culture feels alien. The language changes. The rules seem to shift depending on who's asking. That's an incredibly uncomfortable way to live. Now imagine that someone offers you an explanation, a single explanation. That ties everything together, gives the chaos a shape, and tells you exactly who is responsible. That explanation is psychologically soothing in a way that's hard to overstate. It transforms confusion into clarity. It transforms helplessness into righteous anger. And righteous anger is a much more comfortable emotion than helplessness. This is why conspiracy theories are not primarily about politics. They're about emotional order. The idea that powerful people planned this, that there is a plan, however sinister, is less terrifying than the alternative. That nobody is in control, that institutions are just incompetent, that bad things happen to good people for no reason at all. The conspiracy theory restores meaning to suffering. It gives the pain a cause. And that's why it can be so resistant to logic, because it's not primarily serving a logical function, it's serving a psychological one. But even understanding all of this, there's a risk in how we talk about it. Because the assumption that all distrust is irrational is itself a mistake. Part 10. The difference between healthy distrust and total distrust. Let's be precise about something important. Distrust of institutions is not inherently irrational. Institutions fail. Media outlets have blind spots. Governments lie. Corporations corrupt the systems supposed to regulate them. Intelligence agencies have a long history of abusing their power. Scientists sometimes suppress findings that threaten their funding. Powerful people do protect each other. A healthy democracy depends on citizens who ask hard questions, who don't accept official narratives without scrutiny, who push back when power overreaches. That's not conspiracy thinking, that's citizenship. The problem arises at a specific point, when distrust becomes total. When every piece of contradictory evidence is automatically reinterpreted as part of the plot. When the belief can never, under any circumstances, be falsified. In logic, an unfalsifiable belief is one where no possible evidence could ever disprove it. If someone wins an election, it was rigged. If someone loses, the rigging was even worse. If investigations find no evidence, the investigators are compromised. If evidence does emerge, it's a plant. When a belief is structured this way, it has crossed from skepticism into something different. Because genuine skepticism is open to being wrong. Total distrust is not. And once someone is inside that closed loop, this is what their world looks like. Part 11. Why this belief is so hard to break. Inside the closed loop, every event becomes confirmation. A court dismisses an election fraud case. The judges were appointed by the wrong people or threatened or compromised. An independent audit finds no evidence of fraud. The auditors were chosen by the system. A journalist investigates and finds the claims don't hold up. That journalist works for a captured media outlet. Social media removes a post. That's censorship, which proves they're afraid of the truth. Notice what's happened. Winning is proof the people can overcome the rigging. Losing is proof of the rigging. Investigation is persecution. Silence is cover-up. Agreement is co-option. Disagreement is evidence of the conspiracy. Every possible outcome loops back to the same conclusion. This is not a character flaw of the people inside the loop. It is the logical consequence of starting from a belief that has been made unfalsifiable. Once the foundation is set that way, the architecture above it becomes virtually indestructible. Because the foundation interprets every structural challenge as an attack from the enemy. Breaking out of a closed belief loop almost never happens through argument. It happens through relationship, through time, through gradual re-trust of specific people. Not institutions, not abstractions, but human beings who have earned credibility in someone's specific life. But before we talk about what might help, we need to confront the most common mistake outsiders make about this entire phenomenon. Part 12. What people get wrong about Trump supporters. The simplest explanation for why people believe the system is rigged is usually wrong. They're not all uneducated. They're not all rural. They're not all driven by racism. They're not all victims of propaganda. They're not a monolith. Trump's coalition includes working-class voters who've watched good jobs disappear for 40 years. It includes small business owners who feel crushed by regulation and ignored by politicians. It includes religious conservatives who believe the country's moral foundation is being dismantled. It includes people with deep, legitimate distrust of media institutions that have, in fact, failed them before. It includes people who simply prefer his policies on immigration, trade, or taxes. It includes veterans who feel disrespected. It includes people who find his critics condescending, and who are not wrong about that. There is no single psychology here. There is a stack. Economic resentment at the bottom. Cultural anxiety on top of that. Media distrust layered above. Identity protection reinforcing all of it. Social belonging sealing it in. And at the very top, a political figure who speaks directly to each layer. When you reduce all of this to they're just brainwashed, or they're just racists, or they're just stupid, you accomplish two things. You feel morally superior, and you become completely unable to understand what is actually happening. And if you can't understand it, you can't engage with it. And if you can't engage with it, nothing changes. So let's go all the way down to the emotional core of everything. Part 13, the real emotional core. Strip away the politics, strip away the specific claims, strip away the arguments about specific elections or specific policies or specific institutions. Underneath all of it, what does the phrase, "the system is rigged," actually mean? For many people, it means this: people like me no longer matter. That sentence is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. The need to matter, to have your existence recognized, your values respected, your contribution acknowledged, is not a political preference. It is a fundamental human need, as basic as hunger. When that need goes unmet for long enough, it doesn't just generate sadness, it generates rage. And rage needs a target. It needs a story. It needs a hero and a villain. The narrative of the rigged system gives people all three. The villain is the elite class, the people who took the prosperity, changed the culture, rewrote the rules, and then told everyone else they were on the wrong side of history. The hero is the leader who stands against them. Imperfect, maybe, but real, uncontrolled, and clearly hated by the right people. The tribe is everyone who sees what's happening and refuses to pretend otherwise. And the story, the narrative, does something crucial for human beings. It means the pain wasn't your fault. You didn't fail. The system failed you. You aren't the problem. They are. Now, that may be partly true in any given life. Life is genuinely unfair. Institutions do genuinely fail people. The story contains real threads. But a narrative that explains everything, blames everything on external forces, and is structured to be unbreakable. That kind of narrative is also a cage. It can keep people from seeing their own agency. It can make every problem feel like evidence of persecution. It can make cooperation with anyone outside the tribe feel like betrayal. The tragedy is not that people feel the pain. The pain is real. The tragedy is when a narrative that helps make sense of the pain also makes it impossible to move through it. Why understanding is not the same as agreeing. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about motivated reasoning and status loss and elite betrayal and identity protection and closed belief loops and the algorithm that feeds on all of it. And at no point was the goal to say every claim is correct, or that every belief is justified, or that distrust of institutions is always warranted or always rational. The goal was to understand. Because here's what's true, regardless of where you stand politically, tens of millions of people in one of the most powerful democracies in history have concluded that the institutions meant to govern them, inform them, and represent them cannot be trusted. That is not a fringe position. It is not going away, and it cannot be dismissed or mocked into irrelevance. If you believe these people are simply wrong, that their distrust is unfounded, then you still need to understand why it feels so right to them. Because you cannot reach someone you refuse to understand. And if you believe, as some do, that their distrust is actually pointing at something real, at genuine failures, genuine corruption, genuine contempt from the people in power, then you have to reckon with the fact that those problems don't get solved when the response to them is a belief system that can't be questioned from the inside. The question, is the system rigged, is important. But it might not be the most important question. The most important question might be this: what happens to a democracy when a large portion of its citizens believe, sincerely, deeply, and for reasons that make emotional sense, that the whole thing is a lie? We don't fully know the answer yet, but we are right now in the middle of finding out.